Well, I'm a local lad. I was born in the village where I live now, Streatham in Cambridgeshire, 53 years ago. Probably hard to believe, but it was. I'm chair of Streatham Parish Council for 20 years. Founding chair of Streatham and Wilburton Community Land Trust, which we kicked off 6 years ago. I'll talk more about that in a minute. East Cambridgeshire District Councillor, 7 years, just coming up to the end of my second term in May next year, all out elections, exciting times. Been leader at East Cambs for the last 2 years, following the previous leader, James Palmer, who became the mayor of the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority. We're a devolved authority now, so-called Metro Mayor that we have, which has joined up various levels of government in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. I'm also Deputy Mayor to James on the Cambridgeshire. That's not about blowing trumpets or anything like that, it's just about context of showing how the different organisations have come together to deliver housing in East Cambridgeshire, and hopefully that'll become clear. I think there's three things that I really want to major on today, and I hope you'll take from this. And the first is aligning the priorities of the different levels of government, from the parish through the district, through the county, through the combined authority, making sure priorities get aligned. And then I want to talk to you about land value capture, this business about cross-subsidising private housing into affordable housing to actually make it all happen, getting your hands on some cash, which is often difficult for CLTs, I know. And then also the other big challenge for CLTs as well is about scaling, and how you actually might go about scaling the thing up from 2 houses, 4 houses, 10 houses, 20, and actually having a real impact across an area using a CLT. So I'll hopefully talk to you, explain to you how we've done that in East Cambridgeshire as well. So to set the scene a little, population 1,500 in Streatham, 720 houses with a Streatham and Wilburton CLT. So we partnered with our neighbouring village, they're just a mile away, and they're about 2/3 that size. They're about 1,000 houses and about 500 people. So a little bit smaller than us, but the two villages coming together with Streatham and Wilburton CLT. We're 9 miles north of Cambridge, that economic powerhouse that is Cambridge. You've probably heard of it. Fantastic things going on there. Tremendously prosperous area. We're 4 miles south of Ely. There's a train station there. It's an hour into London. So you'll be aware, you know there's a train from Cambridge to Brighton now, and Brighton to Cambridge going straight through London. It's an hour commute. I'm sure you get the sense that our location, very, very close to Cambridge, very economically prosperous area, very easy commute into London, and all the pressures that brings. Historically, we're a farming and food based economy. Most people used to be employed locally. It was the exception, not the rule, to work out of the village. My father worked in Cambridge. He was very unusual. He went 9 miles to work. The vast majority of people worked in the community. The point I'm getting at here is it's changed very, very, very quickly. In half a lifetime, there's been massive change in our community, massive change. Traditionally low wages, there's still a lot of people employed in agriculture, still a lot of people employed in food processing, there's still a lot of people on minimum wage, frankly, a good proportion of the workforce, local workforce in local jobs, competing with Cambridge and London. It had a very, very strong community. Everyone knew everyone, and in a village of 1,500 people, you'd expect that. Our village and many of the other villages in East Cambridgeshire, very, very resistant to any development at all. Rural exception sites we had, you'll be familiar with the concept, really didn't work well in our area, it's true to say. Poor design often, identikit housing, tacked on the outside of a village, no real local control over planning, not a great deal of local control in many instances over the allocation of those properties. So communities rightly ask, what's in this for us? You've put a carbuncle on the side of the village, there's nothing in it for us, nothing in it for us at all. And we see people, as the housing associations have got bigger and bigger and their priorities change, less and less local control, less and less local, deeply unpopular. So it's changed. It's still 9 miles north of Cambridge, still 4 miles south of Ely. The railway's gone electric, it's a bit quicker, exacerbating the problem. National housing crisis, we all know about it. I guess that's why the vast majority of you are here, because you understand that. Absolutely acute in our area, a serious issue. As I say, very economically prosperous. The bubble that's Cambridge and London. What we see happening where we are, and I imagine you may see the same here, quite whether the line is the same, but we describe this as the displacement cycle. And we say that the very high salaries in London pushes people out of London. They live in Harlow, they live in Hertford, they live in Bishop Stortford. The people from those communities then displace further out, particularly where we are with the effect of Cambridge. We've got the Fens out to the east and to the north of us. And we find that people living in Cambridge, people working in Cambridge, are displaced out to Waterbeach, which is 4 miles from Cambridge, to my village, 9 miles from, and it just displaces local population. That, of course, has a very significant impact on local communities, but it also puts a great deal of pressure on the transport network, which as a combined authority we're looking at increasing. But I often think about half-term week. You know, when the schools are off, how many cars are you actually taking off the road? Not that many. I don't know what the number is. Is it 10%? It's a relatively small number, but look how things flow. So you don't actually have to do very much to have actually quite a big impact on traffic flows. So this displacement cycle, all the time we're pushing people out further and further and further. We're increasing the amount of time they have to spend in their cars. Perhaps they have to run cars that they wouldn't otherwise run if they could stay in the community. Pressure on the families, you know, spending a lot of time. And the roads in our area, frankly, you know, they're 9 miles into Cambridge. Take an hour and a half in the morning into the centre of Cambridge. Big problem, big problem. The other issue here, one where we find we can get a lot of traction at the higher levels of the authorities and government, this is economically restrictive as well. We have a very low unemployment in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. It's around about 2%. So if we're on a global stage, as Cambridge clearly is, and we've got businesses that want to come and locate in Cambridge, there isn't a workforce sitting there waiting to be employed. So you've got to bring people into Cambridge, or you've got to bring them in daily, or you've got to provide houses for them to live in, because they're not there at the moment. So actually, not providing sufficient houses of all tenures, from top to bottom, is economically restrictive. And we are economically capped. And we've just had a big piece of work done, Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Independent Economic Review, chaired by Dame Kate Barker, a well-known economist. And it suggests that in 10 years, Cambridgeshire will stagnate. I think it's stagnating now. I think businesses looking at our area, wanting to come in, or businesses wanting to expand, are struggling. We're economically capped by the lack of housing of all tenures. And if we think about the vast majority of people that are working in most businesses, they'll be on the national average wage or less. You can't live in my village, you can't live in Ely, you can't live in Cambridge on the national living wage. So 3/4 of the workforce can't afford to live where they're working in Cambridge. Morally, socially, economically wrong. So, thinking about actually breaking this cycle then, about 7 years ago, the two parish councils came together, the Streatham and Wilburton parish councils. I say a great deal of unhappiness with the development that we'd seen in the village, the affordable housing development, the rural exception sites. There was some in each village, and they'd been deeply unpopular, they'd been resisted by the local community, and they weren't delivering any substantial benefit to the people of our villages. So we formed the Streatham and Wilburton CLT. The objective of that CLT, and this has been very, very important for us, is to enable people to live and work locally. So in terms of the allocation of the properties, it's very much about local connection. So have you lived in the village for a while? Have you got family here perhaps? What are your local connections? What's the strength of your local connections? And where do you work? So if someone's third generation living in the village and they work in the village shop, they're going to get a house. Simple as that. If they haven't got a job locally, they'll be much less likely. So this has been really powerful for us in selling the concept to the community and in getting widespread community support for some of the schemes. And I'm going to show you some of the schemes we've got later on and show you how we've scaled it and we've still got community support because we've started with some smaller schemes, and we've shown communities, we've proved to communities that you can actually deliver for yourselves, you can get local priority, you can get local benefit. It does work. So we identified some land outside of the development envelope, in fact. We did a call for land. We had 3 landowners come forward, 2 dropped away for different reasons, and we had a Cambridge college that were very happy to engage with us, and we secured 12 acres of land outside the development envelope, but very well situated in relation to the built area. Of course, people in the village panicked because they had 12 acres of land. That's 300 houses, isn't it? Because you take the government's house. No, it's not 300 houses. It's going to be much less than that. It's going to be, we'll see how many the community wants, but in fact, it's likely to be about 50. Because it's going to be low density, high quality, lots of public open space, those sorts of things. So we've got 12 acres of land. We then needed a development partner, and we went out to a number of firms, talked to them. They said, well, there isn't a planning policy. You can't allow this. How can this happen? We can't engage on this basis. But fortunately, the college had worked with a developer called Lara Holmes, who had got some experience, and they took a bit of a risk on us as a community because they saw that we were so determined to actually make this work that they would come on board. We had some support from CABE, Commission on Architecture Built Environment, and we did a huge community consultation exercise. What do you like about the village? What's good? What's bad? What do you want more of? What do you want less of? A couple of very interesting things came out of that. And again, going back to that live and work locally. A doctor's surgery, we've got one in the village now, but it's about to be closed down because it's horrendous. It's substandard. We were going to lose it. So people said, well, can we have a doctor's surgery as part of this? Yeah, we can build that in, and we secured land for a doctor's surgery, and we're just in final negotiations now with the NHS to get that delivered. That surgery, incidentally, will be owned by the CLT and leased to the NHS on a long lease, providing more income for the community, in fact. We had lots and lots of support. We had some great ideas. We've got a developer, we've got a landowner. Everything's starting to line up, but we've got no planning policy. Problem. So this has been led so far by parish councillor, very much parish level. So the district councillor then. Again, I was connected to the district councillor at the time. Same problem, different places. Across our region, we've got, it's typical settlement, Streatham. We've got lots of small villages dotted all over East Cambridgeshire, very similar in size to Streatham. We've got a couple of towns, we've got Ely, and we've got Soham, bigger populations, lots of dispersed villages. Member commitment. What do? We embedded this concept of delivering local affordable housing into our local plan. We made it a priority in our corporate plan. So we put it as one of our key priorities, delivery of affordable housing across the piece. Officer commitment, development of the CLT policy. We haven't got a policy to allow this, but we had rural exception policy. So we wrote a community-led development policy. Our officers wrote a community-led development policy. Some key elements to that. No one other than the community, partnered with a landowner and a developer, can submit an application under that policy because it'll fall at the first hurdle, because you need demonstrable community support. And the community, in each case, each CLT, will be a signature on the planning application. So that's an absolute. And that's been really critical in terms of getting community support, because people feel that actually they have got genuine control. And if they don't sign off, then the application doesn't go forward. Very, very, very key point. There's various other checks and balances in the community-led development policy. It says things like there should be demonstrable community engagement. There should be substantially more community benefit than would be expected in a similar private scheme. We were lucky we were having a local plan review at the time, so the CLD policy went through the local plan and was established and approved. Streatham Wilburton Community Land Trust was then able to put the first scheme, our Streatham scheme, which I'll show you in a moment, through that policy. It was a battle. It was a battle. This isn't what we've done before. It's new. It's a transfer of power. It's all of those things are very, 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 very difficult, very, very challenging. But we were quite determined as communities, and I was quite determined as a member and a few of the other members, that actually we were going to do something about this and drive it through. It was a battle. Financial and technical support at East Cambridgeshire, we recognise there are a number of communities. We were fortunate in Streatham. We've got a tremendous skill set. We were lucky. We'd got a lawyer working for the land registry. We've got someone who was an expert in trusts. We'd got a builder. We've got a local landowner. We've got a tremendous skill set coming together in our trust. We didn't have an accountant, but a guy moved into the rectory and said to me one day, I'm really keen to get involved in the community. What do you do? I'm an accountant. Great, you're involved, you're on the trust. And he's still there now, and he's the guy that's raising all our finance for us. So yeah, a bit of press ganging there and getting people involved. But we recognised in East Cambridgeshire that not every community has that resource available in the community. So we set up a team at East Cambridgeshire Council. We put some funding in place, so we put some initial grants, loans in fact, which are non-repayable. I mean, they're repayable with a success fee if the trust gets going, but there's kind of no risk for communities that want to try and establish a trust. They don't have to pay it back if in fact they don't manage to get there. We haven't made any loans yet that haven't been paid back, because every group that we've loaned to has actually been a success and being able to pay those loans back. So we put a revolving pot of finance in place, 5 £30,000 loans in fact, which gives communities sufficient money to really go out and get on. We also put financial and technical support very much in the same way that the slide that Tom showed earlier about the support that's available to you. That's pretty much exactly what we created within East Cambridgeshire, within our team. We then became a devolved, we set up a mayoral combined authority in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, so the area got bigger. Same problem, bigger place. The mayor, having been leader of East Cambridgeshire and been absolutely in favour of community-led development, supported the principle. You may have seen the publications from government recently on land value capture, very much promoted by James Palmer, Mayor of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. And we'll talk about land value capture in a second and how it works in the CLT context. The combined authority now has a housing team who are working to scale up community-led development, and to do that across the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough piece. And they'll certainly bring cash to the party in terms of the ability to joint venture with communities and really scale things up. They bring connections, of course, into government and elsewhere, and opportunities generated through the combined authority across the wider area where community-led development can take place and where it's appropriate. Cash in the combined authority. We've got £100 million from government to accelerate the delivery of housing in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. The combined authority have loaned to a local CLT. It's 4 miles from my village, Haddenham, very similar to us, very similar scheme to the one that we started with, 52 houses, mixture of private and affordable and shared ownership. £6.5 million loan from the combined authority at favourable rates. So that really empowers that CLT then to actually get on and deliver. And we'll look at the model of land value capture in a moment. You'll see how significant that funding is. We've got a further £33.5 million of loan programme for CLTs in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough as well, which will be available for CLTs meeting the criteria. So this is building up to the kind of scaling up of the whole thing. So the essential features then of the scheme that we have, our community-led development policy. It allows development outside of the building envelope, so agricultural land in our area, £7,000, £8,000, £9,000, £10,000 an acre, value something like that. Provided that there's demonstrable community support, as I say, the community will partner with a developer. They'll get a willing landowner. And actually, people say, well, why would a landowner accept maybe 10 times the agricultural value? We've got a queue of landowners that are very, very happy to accept 10 times. And the question's asked, if someone offered you 10 times the value of anything you owned, it's not unreasonable, and there's a good lot of people that would say, actually, I'll take that. Yes, they might get 50 times or 100 times another day, but perhaps they don't want it another day. Yeah, perhaps they want it now. Perhaps people want. And we have a queue of landowners We have the college, for example, in our village that's saying, we'll do as much as you like on exactly the same basis. So, development outside the envelope. Upon grant of planning consent, these are mixed schemes, so there's some private, and the round figures rule is we have a 30 and 40% affordable housing requirement in our area. So we say that any scheme that's been brought forward by a community land trust, by a community group, should meet the relevant number of affordable houses. So it will need to be a minimum of 30% affordable. Ideally, it'll be more than that. But of course, that then leaves you 70% of open market. So on grant of planning consent, typically 30% by number of the plots transfer. So you've taken agricultural land, in our case at Streatham, 12 acres. On grant of planning consent, 30% of the plots, it's 50 houses in our village, transfer to the land trust for £1. So the land trust then has land, free land. There's 70% private plots. Those plots are valued. The value of the agricultural land is subtracted from that. So the uplift in the land value by grant of planning consent, around about 40% of that uplift in value is given to the trust in cash. So now then the trust hasn't just got land, it's got cash as well. That 40% share of the uplift in value will provide around about enough, approximately enough, to build out half of your plots. And then you need top-up finance. And we'll look at some of the schemes in a moment. With that model, you'll end up, at the end of the day, when the places are built out, having a loan-to-build cost of 50% and a loan-to-value on the property of around about 30%. And that will enable you to rent at between 60 and 70% of open market rents in our area. With the land values we've got, that's roughly where those numbers go. I suspect your property prices are very similar here to us. Maybe they're a little bit lower in some parts. I guess the closer you get to Brighton and so on, changes. I don't know the local area. But with the land values where we are, building plots at about, what would they be, 120, 140,000 pounds. With those sorts of numbers, starter homes, 220, 240,000 pounds. With those levels, this cross-subsidy model will give you enough to deliver that. The important thing is you've got no government subsidy at that point. It's self-funded, it's cross-subsidised, it's captured the value of that land by capping the value of the land at around about 10 times agricultural value. Land value capture. And that's something in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough we're working on to deliver infrastructure as well, looking at ways of delivering metro systems, road improvements and other things by capping the value of land. It's been a voluntary exercise in East Cambridgeshire, and say we've a stack of landowners coming forward with some small schemes, some big schemes, very keen to do it. Benefits beyond housing. Yes, as I say, in our village we've got some workspace, some small work units as well. And that's the live and work locally bit. There's a lot of people working from home. There's a chiropodist. There's a lady that does something, eyebrows or something like that. They want to expand. They haven't got enough space in their house. They want to employ somebody. They don't want someone else working in their bedroom with them. But they don't want to go into the high street. They don't want to go into the expensive property. They want to take a step up. So we've got 4 or 5 small work units rented on very flexible, favourable terms. I don't see the delivery of open market housing as a problem. I think that's a benefit too. We need housing across the piece in our area. We're desperate for housing in our area. The prices are going up and up and up all the time. It's slowed down a little recently, but the demand is there for housing, from affordable housing to the biggest houses. So the fact that we can cross-subsidise, we can take advantage of the fact that those private houses are so expensive and cross-subsidise into the community is a good thing. Of course, the assets are locked in perpetuity in the community, as Tom mentioned, being necessary. So on that note, if I just run through a few of the schemes, I think we've about 5 minutes to go. Pinching that from the national network of their Seeing and Believing roadshow that goes around the country. Fantastic it is too. They've been up to see us. I think it's probably how I ended up here as well. So Manor Farm at Streatham, this is our first CLT. It's now 75 homes. It was 50 to start with because the community was a bit resistant. now, if we put a planning application in tomorrow for 100 more, there wouldn't be a single objector in our community. That's how popular it's been. 75 homes, it's 23 affordable, 52 open market, in partnership with Lara Homes. They're all selling very well. We're just starting phase 2 of that. We've 12 people now living in our CLT-owned properties. To give you a flavour of how land value capture works, we've got around about £2.5 million worth of property held in the trust, and we've got just over £1 million of borrowing with Charity Bank. That's where we're at the moment. So, and we're renting, our average rent is 69% of open market rent. So use pure land value capture model, subsidising with the affordable homes, and we've got long-term borrowing from Charity Bank. Of course, I think the point that was made earlier, a few years down the road, we're paying down the capital and interest. We don't have to, we could just wrap it up and pay the interest and lower the rents a bit, but we're repaying capital and interest on those numbers. So actually, if you look 15, 20 years on, when the capital's gone, we're a very wealthy village. The income that we have at the moment from those 12 houses is approximately equal to our precept in our community. That's the scale of what we can deliver in the future. We'll be a non-precepting parish council. The fledglings at Soham, this is a scheme. What I didn't tell you is I haven't got time to tell you everything. We set up, because there were a limited number of developers that were prepared to engage on the scale that we wanted to, we actually set up our own development company called Palace Green Homes, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of East Cambridgeshire Council. It's a trading company. So if a community wants a developer, if they need a developer, they can come to Palace Green. It's entirely up to them whether they do, but there's a lot of expertise in there now. This was delivered by our trading company. We also then benefit, of course, as a council from any profit that the trading company makes, paid back as dividend to the council. So 8 affordable homes, 6 affordable rent, 2 shared ownership. Market homes subsidising again. We did have some grant in here. I think it's about £30,000 a unit from the Combined Authority. So it's not entirely self-funding, but of course the proportion of affordable is much less open market. This is a development that's just completing. In fact, the 2 houses, I believe, are occupied now. We've just got 2 affordable CLT homes there and some off-site commuted some. And we've got some very nice townhouses overlooking the cricket field at the local school. So a very nice scheme, and some long-term funding there from Triodos. West End Gardens in Hadnam. This is a scheme that we've got the £6.5 million loan from the Combined Authority to deliver. Again, it's being delivered by Palace Green Homes. We've got a local landowner who's in fact one of the trustees on our trust who owns land in this village and said, I'll put some land in on that deal. I'm happy with 8 to 10 times my value of my land, and there's 12 acres gone in there. So 54 homes, 19 affordable, mixture housing bungalows. From first conversation with the landowner to getting planning is 18 months. And if we hadn't had an archaeology, if some Iron Age farmer hadn't been there before, we'd be on site now. So very quick bringing these schemes forward now. But it's because we're lined up at parish level, at district level, at county level, and at combined authority level. The priorities are all absolutely in line. This is a big one. It's 500 homes. It's essentially all but a new garden village, a place called Kennet. It's right on the A14, A11, and it's right next to a railway as well, with a small station which is going to expand and will take you into Cambridge, into London. The existing village is very small. It's about 70 houses, but they've got a community land trust run by those people in that village, and they've decided that they'll put 500 houses on the side of their village and they'll support it and they'll lead it. It was going to happen anyway. This is development land. It's A14, it's A11, it's railway. That's happening because you've got a landowner that wants to sell it, so the probability. But the community got hold of that and they said, we're better being involved than not. We can get something much better out of this if we engage with it. They've done it, they set up the CLT, we've supported it through East Cambs. It's more complicated than just Palace Green Homes. It's obviously a very big site, but it's a land value uplift, market homes and lots of other community benefits, new school and so The interesting thing about this, from first conversation to planning application being submitted, was inside 2 years. Huge new community. Again, very, very quick because everyone's lined up. Parish support, district support, county support, boom, boom, boom. Very quick. We'll be on site there from first conversation with landowner. We should be on site there within 3 years on a scheme of that scale.